This is Grand Theft Info. Not Grand Theft Auto, but info, as in information. In this lesson, we're going to find out how to avoid being accused of something called plagiarism. Plagiarism is a serious offense because it's stealing. It's theft. Plagiarism is where you take someone else's words from a book or a website or some other resource, and you decide to try to pass them off as your own words in a school assignment. It's easy to do because most of us know how to copy and paste, but just because it's easy to do doesn't mean that you can or should do it. In fact, in many schools, there are severe punishments for plagiarism. In colleges and universities, you'll find yourself kicked out. And by the way, they keep your money. What exactly is plagiarism, you're wondering? Well, according to a book called The Instrument of Student Judicial Governance, plagiarism is defined as the deliberate or reckless representation of another's words, thoughts, or ideas as one's own without attribution in connection with submission of academic work, whether graded or otherwise. Did you get all that? How about we put it into layman's terms? It simply means that you're stealing someone else's work and trying to pass it off as yours. It might not be as severe as committing armed robbery at a bank or a convenience store, but it's still very, very serious. Plagiarism is where you write something almost word for word, also known as verbatim, and try to make your teacher think that it's your writing. As an example, let's take a look at this story about Pennsylvania by the author John Smith. On page 48 of his book, Facts About Pennsylvania, Smith writes, Pennsylvania has many interesting facts. It is known as the Keystone State, and its capital is Harrisburg. As of the year 2014, Pennsylvania's population was 12.79 million people. Harrisburg is not the only city in the Commonwealth, however. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are both important cities, with Erie, Scranton, and Wilkes-Barre being some of the smaller urban areas. If your teacher wanted you to write an essay or a report about Pennsylvania, you might want to include a paragraph that looks something like this. Pennsylvania, with almost 13 million people, is nicknamed the Keystone State, and there are several things that make it very unique. First, its capital is Harrisburg, which is located in Dauphin County. But cities such as Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are also major metropolitan locales. Now, after that sentence, right before the period, you're going to see Smith and the number 48 in parentheses. This is called an in-text citation. We talk about in-text citations a lot more in our MLA lesson, but for now, you're able to see what one looks like, and you can easily understand what it's for. Smith is the author's last name. The number 48, that's the page number that it came from. It may seem hard to believe, but plagiarism really is theft. Instead of stealing a laptop, an iPad, a cell phone, PlayStation, or an Xbox, you are stealing the words that someone else took the time to write. You might be thinking to yourself, but it's easy to do. Yes, that is true. It is very easy. It's true that you can find essays and reports on the internet for free. That doesn't make it right to take them and use them as your own. You can also buy essays and reports on the internet. But just because you're paying for it doesn't mean that you may plagiarize. Let's pretend that you forgot to do your homework. You decided to borrow something from a friend, an essay or a report. Well, if you copy something that they've already written to turn in for a grade, that's also plagiarism. You decide to recopy it and hand it in as your own. But what if I hand copy it from a book, you wonder? Nope. That's still plagiarism. The easiest way to avoid plagiarism is to ask yourself, does the information that's in front of you need credit? There are 4 easy areas to figure this out. Number 1, if the words or the ideas that you're using came from a magazine, a book, a newspaper, a song, a TV show, a movie, a website, a game, an email, or an advertisement, you need to give credit. If the information that you're using came from an interview or a conversation, believe it or not, you need to give credit for it. Third, if you use exact words, if you write verbatim, meaning word for word, you need to use quotation marks. You also need to tell the teacher where it came from. Finally, if you use a chart, a drawing, or a photo, make sure that you give credit for that. After all, it's not yours.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Using quotation marks is very easy to do. In fact, as an example, let's go back and use that story from John Smith one more time about Pennsylvania. Suppose that somewhere in your sentence, you decided that you wanted to mention that Pittsburgh was an important city. If you use the phrase important city, you need to put that in quotation marks. You need to tell your teacher that someone else came up with that first. Suppose that you want to use a chart, a drawing, or a photograph. That's okay, but make sure that you tell where it came from. Somewhere near the photo or the chart, make sure that you write the word source. And then right next to that, put a colon. After the colon, make sure that you say where it came from. Make sure that you tell your teacher who came up with that drawing, photo, or chart first. It could be a video game publisher. It could also be a website. The important thing is to list it. 3 things to remember when it comes to plagiarism is this. Number 1, if you go word for word, if you go verbatim, make sure that you use quotation marks. Number 2, paraphrasing is using your own words. Make sure that you do that. And number 3, possibly most importantly, make sure that you tell your teacher where the information came from. You should be using both in-text citations and a works cited page. We talk about those in another video. It is possible to not have to list something. Suppose you were using something that's known as common knowledge. That's where you wouldn't really have to give credit for something. As an example, if you stated that the United States flag has 50 stars on it, you really shouldn't have to tell your teacher where you found that. That's something that everyone should know. But if it's something that's not common knowledge, make sure that you tell your teacher where it came from. By now, you're probably thinking to yourself, I'll never get caught, I'll never get caught. Actually, you probably will. It's more than likely that you found your essay or your report somewhere on the internet, and that's the same place a teacher can go to look to see if you plagiarized. If you've turned something in that doesn't seem like your writing, it's more than likely that your teacher is going to go on the internet and see if they can find out where your essay or your report came from. All they need to do is type it into Google. The easiest way is to type a few sentences in using quotation marks around them. Google will then tell us exactly where it came from. What's nice is that it's easy and it's free. In part 2, we talk more about the works cited page and the in-text citations.